First of all, I want to thank my colleagues for coming to the floor today and talking about the issue of energy and energy independence and the rising cost of energy. It's critically important. I wanted to come for a few moments and talk about something else, if I could, for just a few minutes. I think of critical importance, of eternal importance, and that's the issue of human rights. I think as Americans we have to always remind ourselves that our nation was actually founded on the principles of human rights. If you read back to some of the earliest founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, for example, it says very clearly at the outset that one of the founding principles that led to this creation of this nation, our republic, and the Constitution that followed that, was the notion that all of us are created equal, that every human being on the planet that has ever been born, that will ever be born anywhere in the world, is born with certain rights, that the source of those rights is our Creator. You think about that for a moment, because that is not a common belief. In fact, for almost all of human history, people have believed that our rights as people come not from our Creator. They come from the government, they come from our leaders. Our rights are what the government allow us to have. But that's not what founded our country. Our country was founded on this very powerful idea, the idea that the source of our rights and our value as a human being come from our Creator. And of course that manifested itself in all sorts of things in this country. A constitution, for example, that in recognition of those rights created a system of government that said that the job of the government was to protect these rights, not to grant them. And of course, the American miracle has plenty of witnesses, myself included, and is well documented in the annals of history, particularly in the last half century, the American century, the 20th century, which is shown as an example to the world. And yet the issue of human rights continues to be a central one around the world. And one of the places where I think the American example can make the biggest difference. One of the issues that has interested me since I got here to the United States Senate, my background before I got here just a year ago was in state government, and before that in local government. And one of the great things about being in the Senate is you have access to information, sources of information and individuals with information that I didn't have before I came here. And one of the issues that has fascinated me on a global scale is how human rights are still summarily violated all over the planet. And how, in fact, these powerful ideas that are at the core of our founding as a country are still not widely accepted in many parts of the world. And so as we look at the 21st century, and by the way, this is a great time of year to be in Washington. People are on spring break. They're bringing their kids up here to learn about our republic. So I think it's a great time to remind ourselves of one of the things that made us different from the rest of the world is that we are one of the few countries on the planet that really believes that every single person that has ever been born has rights that they are born with. And we take that for granted. If you've been born here and you've lived here your whole life, you think that's the way it is everywhere. It's not. There are so many countries and societies around the world where people are told, you don't have any rights unless we give you rights. Unless your government or your leaders or your laws give you certain rights, you don't have these rights. In America, we almost take that for granted because we believe that we are born with these rights. And the American example to the world has been what can happen when you actually believe that every single human being has worth and value and rights that they are born with and that you have no right to deny from them. Sadly, there is no shortage of examples around the world where those fundamental rights are violated. And I think no nation on this planet has a larger obligation to speak out against it than ours. And so what I intend to do over the next few weeks is come to the floor and highlight some of these egregious human rights violations, because I think they go to the core of our exceptionalism. They go to the heart of who we are as a people and a nation. They go to the center of what makes us different from other countries around the world. And in many respects is at the heart of what is in debate at this very moment in the world. Because as we enter this new 21st century, there are a handful of nations across the globe that do not want the issue of human rights to be central. They don't want this issue to be at the front burner because they don't believe in these things. What they seek is a new international order where the violation of human rights is nobody's business. You see that today in Syria, where you have people being murdered, where unarmed civilians are being pursued and shelled by an army, where you're having horrifying examples of human rights violations on a daily basis. And at least two countries, Russia and China, have taken the position that it's nobody's business. And one of those countries is the topic that I want to talk about today, and that's China. An emerging power on the world stage that some people, I think, falsely claim will replace America on the world stage. I think that's an exaggeration. By the way, we welcome the economic progress that China has made. I think it's great news that there are millions of people in China that a decade ago were riding around on a bike and now have a car. Millions of people that only a decade ago were living in deep poverty and today are part of the middle class. I think that's fantastic. But don't get ahead of yourself in believing that China is going to replace America on the world stage. This is still the richest, most powerful country in the world. This is still the most important economy on the planet. And our people are as smart and as creative as they have ever been. And that's not going to change. But I think we have to look at China because if in fact they are this rising power, if in fact they are going to be a growing influence on the international stage, we have to ask ourselves, what is their commitment to human rights? And sadly, it's not a very good one. And if you look at the issue of Tibet, it's a perfect example. This is a peace-loving people that have sought a certain level of autonomy. They want to preserve their culture. They want to preserve their way of life. They've gone as far as to say, we're okay with being under Chinese rule, but we want to protect some of the things that are innate and indigenous to our own culture and our own values. And China is systematically trying to erase their culture and their heritage through processes of re-education, through the jailing of people, through the oppression of people, to the destruction of a free press and of systems of communication. It manifests itself today. You've got, I don't know how many people, I think yesterday was the latest incident, of people in Tibet setting themselves on fire. And by the way, we shouldn't encourage that. Horrifying to see that. We hope that stops. But it just leads to an understanding of the level of desperation that exists in Tibet. Now let me ask you a question. If China is indeed a growing influence on this planet, are these the values that are going to replace American values on the world stage? Are these the values that are going to replace our belief that all individuals are created equal with certain rights that come from their creator? Are we prepared to retreat from the world stage and allow that to happen without at least speaking out against it? So we should not be surprised that China stands by and says, do nothing, don't even sanction, don't even put out a nasty letter about Syria. We should not be surprised, because a nation that doesn't care about the human rights of their own people is never going to care about the human rights of others. And the question that we have as Americans is, are we prepared to retreat from the world stage and in fact allow nations like that to play a growing role in the world? Are we prepared to silence our own voice at the expense of their voice? I hope not. And so when we debate in this chamber about issues of economic policy, we're debating issues about America's influence in the world. And I would say to you that if America is diminished on the world stage, whether it be by choice or by accident, if we fail to confront the issues that this nation faces and we choose to decline, it won't just be Americans that pay the price. It'll be people all over the world, including the people that live in Tibet. Because then there will be no voice on this planet that condemns human rights violations the way we do. Because there will be no nation in the world that can prove that in fact you can have a functional society where the innate worth and the value and the rights of that our Creator gives every human being are respected. That's what's at stake here when we debate America's influence and America's standing in the world. And over the next few weeks, I hope to come to this floor and continue to highlight these egregious, unfortunate, there's no violations of human rights. Tragically, there is no shortage of them. In the weeks to come, we'll talk about the problems of human trafficking that exist in our own country, in our own hemisphere, and all around the world. We'll talk about the violations of religious liberties that exist in societies all over the planet. We'll talk about how women have no rights in many of these countries whatsoever. Some nations where a woman is counted as 1/4 of a man in terms of their worth and their ability to speak out. We'll talk about other countries where people are systematically jailed like they are in our own hemisphere for putting out pamphlets that criticize the government. We'll talk, of course, about what's happening in Syria, what's happening in Tibet. Human rights is at the core of who we are as a nation. It is at the core of our identity as a people and as a power on the global stage. It is an issue that doesn't belong to the right or to the left, to Republicans or to Democrats. It is an issue that should unite us all in this chamber and in this country, and we hope to be an effective voice in that regard